Hey everyone, today I wanted to cover using Sony Windas to color calibrate your Sony CRT monitor. Windas is a really powerful tool and it's very important to use because your monitors can and will color drift over time. They'll look greenish, the darks, the blacks won't be black, it'll get too bright. You can have all sorts of problems that will happen over time with these monitors, and that's exactly why Windas was made. It was made for color calibrating them, and it can really cause drastic improvements that are very noticeable. In all the monitors that I have, it's always been the only tool that's helped me. The on-screen display, the color restore options, and degaussing have never worked nearly as well as Sony Windas. It wouldn't compare at all. Sony Windas can be used on almost all of the high-end Sony CRT monitors, and the monitors that were made that used Sony tubes and components. That would include certain monitors, some made by IBM and Dell. If you want to know if your monitor has Sony tube or component, you're going to have to look into your specific monitor. And let's get right into it. So as I said, Sony Windas can make a huge improvement. That's the main reason that you'd want to use it. If your colors are not satisfying, if you're having brightness problems, Sony Windas can correct that. It can also correct geometry issues with your monitor. Today, we're just going to cover the color calibration part of Windas, and let's get right into it. You're going to need a few things. You're going to need a colorimeter. I'm using the X-Rite Color Monkey. I got it on a secondhand market. I got it, it was actually about $100, but I've been using it a lot on a lot of CRT monitors, and for me, it was worth it. You can rent one. I'm not really a fan of that idea. I don't know, you're paying a lot of money, to only have it for a little bit of time, and you're probably going to want to use it at some other point. So I'd really recommend looking on, a used market or saving up to get a colorimeter or borrowing one from a friend. I think those are really good options. You could also consider renting one, but you're also going to want a copy of HCFR. It's a color calibration program. I'll be showing it. And you're going to need a USB serial TTL converter. You're going to be plugging in from your computer to the monitor. You're going to be doing color calibration by communicating and sending data to the monitor's EEPROM, which is electronic programmable, memory for the monitor. And these EEPROMs can last a long time. They can be written to a lot. They, are used in all sorts of, electronics even still today. And we're going to talk about that. And then you're going to need a copy of the Sony Windas program. More on that in a minute. So I'm using Windows XP. I'm using it on an installation of VMware Workstation Pro. I would recommend using VMware Workstation Pro. I think it's a lot better. People try to run Windas, which is the Sony color calibration software, which was not made for Windows 10. I tried using Windas on Windows 10 and I was having a lot of stability trouble with it, even in compatibility mode. I would not recommend trying to run it on Windows 10, even though it could work, but I was not pleased with my experience, to say the least, on Windows 10. So I would really recommend you get VMware Workstation Pro. Obviously, it's an expensive piece of software. Some people buy a VPN and then they, get, a program like QBitTorrent, and they turn on their VPN and they, download it on QBitTorrent. And, when you do everything right, it's practically impossible that you would get caught, but of course that would be unethical and you should not do that. You could natively install Windows XP on a second computer or laptop. I don't know, I think that's a pretty good way to do it, but pretty time consuming and you got to have the hardware for it and you got to, flash a whole operating system onto it. I'm not a huge fan of that idea, but it's certainly a possibility. I also recommend USB extension cables. My accelerometer and my USB serial TTL converter could not reach my tower, so I got two USB extension cables because of that. And then a StarTech DisplayPort to VGA adapter. There's a very specific adapter model that works really well with high resolutions and high refresh rates, and oftentimes goes well beyond its specifications when you're pushing it. And then I would recommend an Amazon Basics VGA cable. I have a lot of VGA cables. I got new VGA cables from eBay. I got VGA cables from people who had these monitors, and they're older. I had one VGA cable laying around in the house from probably a decade ago. A lot of those cables, I was having image purity issues with them, and a lot of interference on the screen, visible interference. Because VGA is an analog signal, it's going to be, prone to interference way more than, a digital signal like a USB would, or a DisplayPort, which are what, people are used to. So people are not used to, cables mattering, these days, because digital transmission is, really elegant. When you're talking about VGA cables, getting a good one really matters, and I think it's important to get a good VGA cable if you're going to go through the trouble to do color calibration. The one I got on Amazon is like about 8 feet, and it works really well. I'd really recommend you look into that, and I'll link all of that below in the description. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Windas color calibration and hooking up the USB adapter. So let's first talk about this adapter here. Let me just exit out of this for now. So you're going to hook up the adapter. You're going to go from the ground on the USB adapter to the ground on the monitor. You're going to have to take off the back case here on the monitor. It's going to be a little different for every model. Taking off the back case is maybe slightly hazardous because there is a high voltage flyback transformer on the top of the monitor that plugs directly into the tube of the monitor. So when you take it apart, just don't stick your hand up there. Make sure you take precautions. I mean, it's a big piece of silicone. You'd have to like lift it up, to get shocked, as far as I know. And I have not been shocked, but just be a little careful. So the EEPROM in the monitor is going to be in the back somewhere. It's going to be like around here. There's going to be like a metal frame inside the monitor behind this plastic shell. There's going to be like little holes somewhere in that frame, depending on which model you have. It's in different places. On my monitor, which is an IBM P260, it's in the back, right around where I put the arrow here. This is not the monitor I have, but this is like where it is for me, if we're talking about the position. You're going to want to be a little delicate with the pins on the monitor. You don't want to break them. And if you do break them, I really don't know how you'd go about fixing that. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but I would be really delicate because, that's something you really, really do not want to get into. I mean, it might actually be impossible to replace because there's certainly no more parts made by Sony for these monitors at all. So you're going to hook up your USB serial adapter. There's going to be little markings on the board where these pins are for the EEPROM. It'll say like ground, 5 volt, or something like that, RXD and TXD on the monitor. And then on your adapter, on the PCB on your adapter as well, it's going to have all sorts of little codes here, something like this. It's going to say like ground, TXD, RXD. You're going to want to hook up the ground on your USB TTL converter to the ground on the EEPROM from the monitor's pin. You're going to want to hook up RXD from the monitor to TXD on your adapter here. I'm not really absolutely certain why you go from TXD to RXD, but yes, I know that's counterintuitive. That is how you have to do it. Then from RXD to TXD, and then there's a power cable here. You're going to want to connect or plug in the monitor to 5 volt power connection here. I mean, you're going to have the monitor plugged in for this, so this is optional. I wouldn't really worry about that too much. You might have to do it depending on your model. I'm not really certain, but the only thing you want to make sure is you don't send like 3.5 volts. On the serial adapter I'm linking in the description, there's a separate area and there's a little piece of plastic with some metal inside of it, and you like switch around the position of it if you want to have 5 volts or 3.5 volts. So just make sure that whatever adapter you have, you select the 5 volt option, not the 3.5 volt. Okay, so that's how you're going to be connecting it. You're going to be plugging in the USB serial TTL converter to the monitor and your computer. And then let's talk a little bit about color calibration here. So there's different white points we're going to be adjusting for. There's different, the most common white point is 6500K, and it's, a pretty neutral, maybe a little bit warmish of a white point. Each white point has a different coordinate here. As you can see, this is an XY coordinate chart. Each color has its own coordinate on the color spectrum. So when you're doing color calibration, you're looking at one of these coordinates and you're using the monitor and you're saying, how far off is the monitor from, this right now, and let's adjust to be where we want to be. So we're going to be adjusting for a few different color temperatures or different white points. So we're going to be adjusting for sure for like 6500K and 9300K. So 6500K would be like somewhere around here, probably, and 9300K would be somewhere over here. 9300K is a little bit cooler, it's a little bit more blue. 6500K is almost what everything uses these days. It's a little bit warmer. Personally, I don't know, I kind of prefer 9300K, but we're going to be adjusting for all of it. That's how Sony Windas works. So let's get right into it. We're going to load up VMware. And as you can see, I have a VM here, and I will probably link the copy of my VM instance for you because I have Windas already installed on my VM here. And I mean, there's some guides for how to install it. I'll link those for sure, but you don't really have to go through the trouble of installing Windas, if you have VMware. You can just load in the VM. So let's power it on. Oh, Windows XP, the good old days. I don't really know how to use Windows XP too well. I like Windows 7. If they still made a supported version of Windows 7, my God, I'd be their first customer. All right, the first thing you're going to do with Windas is you're going to select your model. So my IBM P260 is based off the CPD G500. So I naively selected that when I first did my color calibration. Nothing really went wrong. The monitor's fine, I did all my calibration like that. But actually, when you don't have a Sony model, you do not want to select these. You want to actually select one of the other, manufacturers. So as you can see, there's all sorts of monitors here that used Sony tubes. My monitor is called the IBM P260, but you don't see any IBM P260s here under the model name tab. Let me make this a little bigger here. What you do see are these weird codes here. And there's a sticker on my IBM monitor inside the chassis, right on the metal of the monitor. And it has a code on it. It says 655263N-U. So that's the one that I'm going to want to select here. So let me just go through that. Uh, 6552. Wait, what did I say? So my model is right here, as you can see. That's the code that's on the sticker on my IBM monitor. So that's what I'm selecting. Obviously, if you had a different monitor, you would select that model. So I'm going to click OK. and I'm going to go here to the Adjustment tab, the Procedure tab. Windas is actually, we're not going to do procedure yet. Let me talk about something. Windas is a program where you're going to have some stability issues. So the reason I use Windows XP is because I've had, a lot less of the program freezing up. I've had a lot less crashing, when using Windows XP, which I think was a supported version for this program. Using Windows 10, I had a lot more trouble with it. As you can see, I attached the USB serial TTL converter to this VM so it can communicate with it, which is what you're going to have to do. And you're going to want to save the data of the monitor first. The reason you save the data is if you exit out of the color calibration while you're doing the color calibration, or if the power goes out or anything happens, you're going to damage, the EEPROM. And if you don't have a backup of the initial settings, there's really nothing you can do. It's like going to be a pretty bad spot to be in. You also want to have the original EEPROM in case, you're calibrating it and you screw up and, it looks really bad. Then you're going to want the initial settings. So it is really, really, really important that you save the initial settings of the monitor. Save it once, save it twice, put it on like 3, different places, put it on a USB stick, Don't lose the initial settings of your monitor. Make sure you have it like in more than one place. You really, really, really do not want to lose that ever in your entire life. As long as you have the monitor, you want to have the initial settings. So let's go ahead and save that first. So let's just, I don't have to put that there. Let's just save it here. And while I'm saving the initial settings, which by the way, these are not actually my initial settings because this is, currently calibrated-ish. But when you're saving this, no matter, whether or not it's, when you're saving with Windas, it could crash. If it does, you're going to want to save it again. You're going to want to save it until it saves properly. Then you're going to want to save it again until it saves properly. So you're going to want to have 2, completely, kosher saves. You're going to want to check both of the saves with checksum. Make sure that they both contain exactly the same, data. That part is not like completely necessary using a checksum on it, but if you want to be careful, you can do that. But just make sure that you save it properly, that it doesn't crash. Like, make sure that you're really confident in your save, then you save it again, and you're confident in that one too. So I want, you want to have 2 saves of your initial data that you're confident in, and then you want to put that in more than one place. So let's go ahead and finish this here. And luckily, it looks like Windas did not crash for me. Now, because I'm just showing this as an example, I'm not going to save it again, but you should save it, more than once. Windas might crash. It might say, bus is NG or something. There are certain settings I should probably talk about. I'm not certain where they are. I think it's config. Yeah. You're going to want to set Windas SG, set it to manual. Use these settings. It'll also increase your stability. If it crashes, you might get, certain messages. You might have to unplug the serial converter from the cable attached to the monitor. So if you unplug, you might have to unplug that and plug it back in to get Windas to work again. You might have to make sure the cable plugged into your monitor is secured on the monitor side. If you do unplug the USB converter, don't unplug it from your computer, unplug it from the monitor. You're going to want to leave the cable in the monitor because you don't want to really be like unplugging that and plugging it back in because it's kind of hard to get in there in the first place. Make sure you unplug that from the adapter, not from the monitor. so if it crashes, you know, you're going to have to restart the VM. You're going to have to unplug that. You're going to have to, you know, try a bunch of different things. You might have to just like do the exact same thing like 10 times in a row before it finally works. You know, Windas is um, a really useful piece of software. It's a really good piece of software, but it's an ancient piece of software and it is not supported, and you're going to have trouble with it. So let's get right into the calibration of the monitor now that we have our initial data. So we're going to, oh, Windows crashed. So that's all right. We're going to restart the entire VM here. And I'm going to unplug my USB converter briefly from the monitor and plug it back in. All right, and our VM is back up. Let's load up Windows. So we're going to go here to Adjustment, Procedure, and then we're going to go down here, all the way down here, Skip Preparation. These adjustments here are for monitor geometry. I think ideally in the factory they went literally like right down the list and they did all these things in order. I'm pretty sure. What we're going to be doing is we're going to, in this video, I hope I can make another one on geometry, though that is like, you know, something I'm still a little inexperienced in. But we're going to go straight down to white point balance. And then when we're done with white point balance, we're going to go to the final settings here before exiting out of Windows, and we're going to set the final values. Then it'll be saved. If you just do the white point adjustment and you exit out of Windows, I think you're going to have trouble. I don't think it'll actually save to the monitor. So we're just focused on these last two steps here. Now, the procedures that come up are going to be probably a little different depending on your model. The order of the steps in the procedure is going to be a little different. So each procedure that Windas comes up with for your monitor is going to be a little different depending on the model name. So what I'm going to be showing you for my IBM P260 is not going to be the same as your model. It's probably going to be a little different. That's okay because luckily the steps in the Windas white balance adjustment are very, very similar, and this video should give you a very good idea of how to adjust your monitor. It should be a almost identical process, maybe in a different order, maybe using different language, but it'll be very, very, very similar. So we're going to do white balance adjustment here. Click select. We're going to want to make sure that we are sending our monitor what it wants here. It's going to come up and tell you exactly what resolution it wants you to run at. The specifications of that resolution, which you should not have to worry about too much, and then the pattern that you're going to be using. More on that later. We're going to go here to customize, create custom resolution in the NVIDIA control panel here. And then if you change the refresh rate here, I often find that like clicking around here and reselecting automatic will change the settings down here to update them. Like if you just change this to 87 or like 10 or something absurd, you'll see the automatic settings don't change down here. So like you have to reselect them, and sometimes that does change it. So we're going to go back to 85 here because that's what we want. Select automatic, that's what I want here. And then these specs line up with what Windows wants. And that's already what the default is on my selection over here. So luckily, the NVIDIA control panel gave me what Windows wants as a default option. So we're already good on that front. We're going to click OK here. And hopefully Windows, all right, here we go. So it wants us to adjust the image size. If we did not adjust it previously, which we did not, I did not go through the geometry settings. If I did, I could skip this. I'm going to skip it anyway because it just wants you to make sure that the image is, centered and that there's no big gaps on either, side. My image on the monitor is pretty centered right now. I mean, there's like some small gaps, but it's not a huge problem. So we're going to click OK. We're going to skip that part. Click OK here. Nothing has changed really. And it wants us to warm up the monitor for an hour. So I'll be back. All right, and we're back. And you might be able to see my CRT monitor here in the top left corner. So I do have this, I do want to mention, if you get the Color Monkey, I do have this right here. And I noticed that someone actually mentioned on Reddit, when you put it like this, or if you take it off completely, it'll look good, but if you have it like this, it'll kind of interfere with the colors of the monitor sometimes. I think because it's a little magnetic. But it looks like our VM was sleeping, so hopefully that did not make Windas crash. Let's take a look here. All right, good. So you can test the settings of the monitor right here, but I would honestly just bypass testing them. It's not going to be worth your time. You know, and it's not anything you couldn't do yourself. So, okay, so during the white balance adjustment, we're going to be setting the X and Y coordinates many times. So, when you're using the red slider, it'll affect X mostly, green will affect your luminance and Y, and then blue will affect both of them. And it gives us some tips here. It'll give you little tips like this. So when it's talking about X and Y, let's see here. When it's talking about X and Y, it's about this right here. So the lowercase x and y are about the position on the color chart here. So you're calibrating. You're calibrating by changing the monitor's x and y value for what white should be. And when you adjust the white point, all the other colors will fall into place. So it's telling you like which sliders will affect the x and the y value. It's just some tips here. The capital Y will usually be affected by green, mostly, except everything will have a little bit of an effect on luminance, and then every color will have a little bit of an effect on the other, on X and Y and everything. So it's all a little bit interdependent. So here, let's do not cancel or click escape or exit. You could damage the EEPROM. You can load the EEPROM back in if you have saved it, even if you exit out. But you should definitely save it. All right, so it wants us to use grayscale pattern. Okay, make sure you take a look at what the pattern it says down here. All right, so adjust G2 to make the darkest level pedestal slightly visible. So the way that Windas is going to tell you to do this, depending on your monitor, might be a little different. I have one other monitor that I've calibrated with Windas so far, and I definitely know that it talked about this exact same step with different language. So let me just see where I put my patterns. So here's the grayscale pattern I have. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to make the darkest level distinguishable, barely, from the other one. So I'm going to raise up the G2 here. If you click really fast on the slider, Windas can crash. I've done that sometimes. You can also just click here, like in the bar, you can adjust it by 20 at once. And then you're supposed to be able to, I think, type in a number here. That doesn't work, so I would not recommend that. And I mean, ideally, you want to get into like a really dark room and you really got to adjust your eyes, like, allegedly. But I just think that if you really just like, look at it kind of closely, you can get pretty close to where you want to be. So I don't really turn off all my lights. I just have one small lamp here. But I want to keep raising up the G2 because right now there's two bars here and it's hard for me to tell. They look like the same color almost. So let me raise it up by 1 and right, there we go. So now I can definitely tell them apart, but I can tell them apart too well. I want to get low as possible. And I can kind of make them out here, but I'm gonna go like a little lower because I'm sure if my eyes were adjusted, I could probably make them out even better. So because I have some light on. Anyway, let's click OK here. And then we're going to do the exact same thing for green. You might not have this step depending on your model. So I'm just going to adjust it by 20, and then I'm going to go down until I can barely tell the difference between the lower steps, which I think is right here. Okay. All right, the pattern we're going to be using is black. So when I first did this step that's coming up here, I did not pay any attention to the pattern that Windas was telling me to use. And I thought that I was going to be using white. So when I was done with the calibration, I was using white at every step, and it came out terrible because, I wasn't supposed to be adjusting for white. I was getting so confused. So yeah, it'll come up. It'll tell you what kind of pattern to use. So a black pattern, I'll show you what that looks like. So we're going to load up HCFR, which is what I was talking about earlier. This is a program you have to install. We're going to select the automatic generator, select your colorimeter, and then we're going to click refresh display here. And we're going to go into preferences really quick. Go into the references part. Select standard sRGB. Okay, we're going to be using this as a computer monitor, so we want to be using sRGB. That's what our computer is going to be outputting. And sRGB is the color gamut you're going to get with a CRT monitor. So these monitors were not made to use a color space outside of sRGB. They cannot display color space outside of sRGB. To the best of my knowledge, there was one monitor made by Mitsubishi that could do full Adobe RGB, I believe. But I've never seen one for sale. I bet that'd be a nice one to have. So anyway, sRGB, we're adjusting for 9300K, all right? So we have to change the white point here, so make sure you click that checkbox. And then we could select down here 9300K, but really we want to just go all the way down to the custom tab because Windas is giving us certain numbers for the white point X and Y value. So we're going to enter in X equals 0.283 and Y equals 0.298 because that's what Windas is telling us 9300K is going to be for the purposes of this calibration. So go ahead, click apply. And then if you're having the pattern that shows up on the wrong display, make sure you just go into this tab over here in the generator tab, and you can select the display you want it to output on. They both say generic PNP monitor, but there's two choices there. So let's click the green icon, and we're on the right monitor here with the color testing pattern, and it's trying to go through and like test all the colors. It's like starting at white and gray. We just want to go straight to completely black, and we're going to be looking at the values here. So we're going to be looking at the X and Y value and the capital Y here, right here at the 0 in HCFR. So as you can see, Our capital Y is currently at 1.581, so we are not bright enough. Let's try to raise the brightness there pretty substantially. And here, let's just raise it across the board really quick. All right, and now we're at 9, and our x value right here is at 0.209. We want to be closer to 0.283. And Windas tells us adjust x with the red slider, mostly. All the sliders here are going to affect each other somewhat. But when it says adjust x with red, it means use the red slider here. And that'll have the biggest effects on it. So let's see. Adjusting the slider could make it go up or down. So the first thing I like to check is this is going to make it go up. So yeah, when we increase the slider, the x value goes up. So that's what we like to see. And we are getting too bright here, so let's lower all the sliders by a little bit. We're getting too bright, and we know that because brightness is capital Y, that's nits. And we can see over here the capital Y was it was around 10, now it's closer to where we want to be. And let's lower it a little bit everywhere again. All right, I'm going to increase the red slider here. I want to get that x value up quite a bit. I was clicking pretty fast there. I'm lucky it didn't crash. So now we're at 0.283 for the x slider. Now we got to adjust for lowercase y here, and that's going to throw us off. We're not going to be at 0.283 anymore probably, because as I said, all the sliders affect each other slightly. So now we've got adjust y with blue. So let's go to the blue slider. We want to get our y up quite a bit. As we can see here in HCFR, our y value is at 0.273. We want to be closer to 0.298. So right now our lowercase y value is too small. So let's go ahead and adjust y with blue. So let's see what happens when we increase blue. Oh, our y value is going down. All right, so let's decrease the blue slider here. Let's see what happens then. So our y value is going up, and we want to go up quite a bit. And before I go too much farther here, fine-tuning it, let's lower across the board all the sliders a little bit. Maybe by 5, because we're getting too bright. All right, nice. And we're getting pretty close to where we want to be, which is good to see. So just going to decrease this a little bit. I want to get as close as possible to the given numbers. So I like to spend a little bit of time with it. All right, I think that's pretty good. I think that's as close as we're going to get. Windas does tell us it wants the margin of error here to be plus or minus 0.01. We're not going to get that close, sadly. Maybe if I really sat here and played around with the sliders a ton, I'd get a little closer, but I'm already so close, and my measuring tool, isn't even that precise. So, and we don't need it to be. With this much precision, we're already going to have a fantastic calibration. So let's go ahead and make sure we've got the numbers where we want to be. And yeah, they look pretty good. So let's click OK here. The pattern we're going to be using next is white. All right, and we are right away too bright. Let me decrease the brightness slider here. So right now we have a separate brightness slider at the bottom. In this step, we only have blue and green that we're adjusting. So we have the color bars right here, which are going to be very helpful. Let me talk about that in a second. So we can see that we have a lot of red right here, and we cannot change the red value whatsoever. So all we can change is the green and the blue sliders. So let's try to increase the blue, and let's try to get it closer. All right, nice. All right, now we're way too green. So you want all these numbers to be around 100%. So, on the earlier step when we were, using black, the last step, we didn't have these color bars, so I was adjusting, based on the X and Y coordinates, and I was looking at each other. But, all the other steps are a lot easier because, you can look at, the bars right here. So you just, all you got to do is look at the bar and you can decide if you need to increase or decrease, blue or green. So, this is not too hard actually when Windas, is stable. So let's increase blue a little bit. Let's decrease green a little bit. And as you can see, our delta E is going down pretty considerably. We're actually getting like a really nice white point calibration with this monitor. Even on the LCD panel I have, I couldn't, I don't have the ability to do this type of calibration, So even in factory mode on my LCD panel. Oh, okay. Delta E of 0.1. Doesn't get much better than that. All right, pattern we're going to be using is gray, 30. So select 30 right here. In HCFR, I just selected the 30 right here between 0 and 100. Make sure when you load up HCFR, you do select the grayscale test here, which is the one right here in the top left here. All right, so we're at 30 here, which is where Windas told us to go. So we have the sliders again, so we need to adjust blue and red. We cannot adjust the green sliders. So let's just increase this here. Oh, I think we're too blue. Sometimes you can just look at the monitor and you can tell, like, So we're pretty close here. Let's see if we can get it a little better. I like to, really get OCD about this, I like to get it as close as I can. All right, I think that's as close as we're going to get. The next pattern we're going to use is white. We're going to have sliders again. I love the sliders. It makes right here, the RGB, the little cylinders here in HCFR, these are so helpful. They are so useful. You can basically just ignore the Windas instructions here for, adjust X with blue. Of course, you're going to adjust, the blue over here with the blue slider. So we want to be at 115 nits. Right now we're too bright. So let's decrease that. And let's increase it a little bit. All right, and it looks like red is too low, but we don't have a slider for red. We have sliders for green and blue. So let's just decrease green and blue. Okay. and we're at 106 nits. We want to be at 115. So this monitor still gets very bright for a CRT especially. Okay, and that's as close as we're gonna get. Okay. You know, I didn't check what pattern I should be using. Did it say? I think it's white still. I sure hope so. I'm gonna have to go back and check that. Okay. All right, this is as close as we're gonna get. The delta E is 1.7 up to 2. I mean, it's oscillating a little bit, but I think that's as good as we're gonna get. I really wish I could get a little bit lower than that, but it is pretty good. 0.9. And then wait for luminance to stabilize. Honestly, I'm not really sure what the step does. You know, I think you are supposed to wait for your nits over here that it's reading. It's going to decrease a little bit and then kind of stabilize. But the thing about my colorimeter is that, you know, the nits here are always oscillating. You know, I've heard you just can wait a couple minutes and come back and you should be good. I've heard a lot of things about, you know, this step here. Apparently, leaving this on too long will make the automatic brightness limiter of the monitor stronger. So the longer we wait here, you know, if something like really bright flashes onto the monitor, like the whole screen, it'll decrease the global brightness temporarily, you know, because it doesn't want to like burn out the electron guns on the monitor. So it's an automatic brightness limiter, you know, if it's like the whole screen, you know. If it's like a little patch that gets really bright, you know, that won't kick in usually. But you know, you don't really want the automatic brightness limiter to be too aggressive anyway, so usually a couple of minutes of waiting is good enough. But personally, I haven't settled on how much I like to wait. And I think I might, I'll definitely link some guides down below that helped me when I was first trying to do Windas. Um, and if I think of anything else that I forgot to mention in the video, I'll try to put that in the description as well. Um, but I think this was enough waiting. I'm not, like I said, I'm not really sure on this step how much you should wait or what you should be looking for exactly. Um, my, you know, capital Y here, my nits, it never really goes down by much when it stabilizes. You know, nothing really changes when I leave this on, even for like half an hour. as far as I know. So now this is a verification step. We're going to be doing the slider here, and we're going to see how much our delta E changes. So delta E is like an accuracy rating. So this verification step is just like, move the slider around slowly, don't drag it. Okay, you're going to crash Windas. But just make sure the delta E stays consistent all the way across it. That's what you want to hope for. And at the very bottom, it should shoot up a little bit, and that's completely normal. But actually at the very bottom, mine's looking pretty good right now. So I'm happy about that. So if, you're doing this, slider here, and, your delta E is like, 10, or it's like 5, and it's something high that you don't want, if you want a lower delta E, if you want more accuracy, you can press readjust here. You'll go through all those steps we just did for the white point. You'll do that again. So I see that my delta E is good, so I just like raise this back up a little bit and click OK. The pattern, let's see here, grayscale. Okay. All right, same thing. Make sure that the delta E is accurate all along the brightness slider here. And we can see that it is. I do like to kind of like return the slider here on Windas, like back to where it originated. Like, I mean, this is a verification step, and I don't think it'll have a bearing on the monitor's settings, where you leave the slider, but I do like to do that. All right, so we're done with the 9300K calibration, so now we're moving on to 6500K. So we are going to have to go and change our preferences here. We're going to have to change the white point. And we're going to be using a black pattern. That's what Windas just told us. 0.313. So put in the new white point coordinates that Windas gives you. Hit apply here. Okay, and we're calibrating for black right now. So we're at 8 nits, which is pretty good, and actually everything is looking pretty close to where we want to be. We do need to be a little higher on the red here, so let me increase this a little bit. And it says adjust lowercase y with blue, and mine's too low right now, so let me just decrease the blue slider right here. That should make y go up. And we need to go up like quite a bit. And it looks like me using the blue slider right here, it has affected our X value. So I'm gonna have to go back and like fine tune it. I'm gonna have to go in between them a little bit. So let me see here. Our X is at 0.329. I want to be a little lower. So let me decrease this a little bit here. And we are like really close here with the X and Y value. I do see like our capital Y, our nits value, it's too low right now. We want to be at 8 plus 1 or minus 0 is what Windas says. So it could be higher than that by 1, but Windas is telling us not to go any lower than 8. So I am going to increase our brightness a little bit. All right, and I think this is going to be as close as we get. I wish we were a little closer, but I think that's fine. All right. I'm pretty sure Windas said we want to use a white pattern here, so let's load that up. Sometimes I forget to look. I really should. You know, you're used to like when pop-ups come up, you just click OK, but when it comes to Windas, you do want to check that out. All right, so we can see here from the little RGB cylinders that we need more red, but we don't have a red slider here, so we just have to decrease blue and green. So let's go ahead and do that. And we lost a lot of our brightness because of that, so let's go ahead and increase that. Oh. All right, perfect. We're exactly where we want to be. The pattern here is going to be 30. And we can see from our little RGB cylinders here, too much red, so let's decrease that. Oh, and I overshot it, so just by a little. All right, that's pretty good. I don't know if we could get closer. Let me see if I decrease the red here just a little bit. Yeah. Okay, I think that's close. Pattern's going to be white here. Okay. Windas says we should repeat the last step until no more adjustments are required. I don't think so. I think we'll only do it once. So we want to be at 100 nits here. We're a little bit below that. And we have our little RGB cylinders here, so make sure you use those. All right. All right, our delta E is 0.2. We're exactly where we want to be with our brightness. So we're going to continue. Okay. So Windas says if we cannot get as low as it wants us for the luminance, the nits value, the capital Y here, you know, it wants us to get to 10, and if, you know, you were on this step and all you could get was like 15, it says just keep going. That's what Windas is telling you right here. It says when you cannot adjust luminance to within spec, even if cont min is 1, keep cont min to 1. So we can, though, we're actually below, so we have to increase this. So we definitely need to decrease blue by just a little, or maybe not. All right, I think this is pretty good right here. Let's click OK. And then we have a verification step here. So let's just really quickly, not too quickly, Windas might crash. And it looks like it's going really well. Across the board with our contrast slider here, our delta E is under 1. So sometimes a lot closer to 0. So that's really good to see. We're going to be using a grayscale pattern here. Okay, so that's just a white pattern really is all we're going to use. This is just a verification step. Because the white pattern is part of the grayscale pattern here, so. I imagine you could be like, check all the other parts here, like 90, 80, 70, so you could go down the line if you wanted. But I'm not going to do that. All right, and we're going to be adjusting 5000K. So, your monitor might ask you to adjust like 6500K and 5500K, or it could be 5000. The exact color temperatures it'll ask you to adjust for is going to vary from monitor to monitor. So the pattern we're going to use is black, okay, and then we're going to get new X and Y values here for the 5000 color temperature. And we got to use the black pattern here. And right now we're at 8.3 nits, which is pretty good. And we need to increase our X value, and it says adjust X with red. So let's see what happens when we increase the red slider. And we are certainly increasing the X value with the red slider. So let's get as close as possible here. All right, we're pretty close now. Let's adjust the Y value with the blue slider. So we want to increase that quite a bit. So, oh, I overshot it. And our X value has changed a little bit here, so now we have to readjust that. So we kind of have to go back and forth a little bit here. Oh. All right, and now we have to go back to the Y slider because they are affecting each other, and we got to keep, tuning one and then the other. We got to go back and forth until we get close. And right now we are actually pretty close, and I think we might be where we want to be. Let's see here if we can get a little closer. All right, perfect. All right, we're well within where we wanted to be, I think. We're going to be using a white pattern, it said. And we're currently at 109 nits. We want to be at 100, so let's decrease that a little bit first. So you don't want to go, above like, what Windas tells you, if it tells you 100 nits, you don't want to be like, oh, let me push it further. I want it to be brighter. You don't want to like wear out the tube, number one, and you don't want to mess up the, a white point balance procedure, the monitor is meant to be calibrated, as it tells you. That's going to be the best way to do it. So let's decrease this a little bit. I mean, at least that's how I would, imagine it works. 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's increase our brightness just a little bit here. The sliders here are having like a really small effect on the values, which means we can probably get pretty accurate on this step. So let me increase screen a little bit. All right, we're at delta E of 0.1, but our brightness is at 95 and we want to be at 100. So let's just increase that slightly. And our delta E is 0.1, which is really good. Oh, 0 maybe. So let's click OK. We're going to be using a gray pattern 30, so make sure we select that and HCFR here. Adjust Y with blue. Okay, so we got our color cylinders here, so let's just use that. So our blue is too low here, so let's increase that with Windas. Nope, I'm definitely overshooting it. This is really sensitive here. All right, I think that's as close as we're going to get. Let's click OK. It says we're going to be using a white pattern next. Okay. All right, 90 nits. We're already pretty close to that. And our blue is maybe a little high, we can see here. Let's just try to decrease that slightly. All right, perfect. We're pretty close. Click OK. And our brightness is at 8.6. Let's get it up to about 10 where it wants to be. Then we'll play around with the other sliders. Okay, so our delta E is maybe around 0.5. I wish we could get a little lower, but that is actually a really good delta E. So we're at where the brightness wants to be just about. Let's click OK. And it has a verification step here for us. So let's just do that pretty quickly. And as I said, when you go lower, it's normal for the delta E to increase a little bit. We're not seeing that right here. Maybe a little at the bottom. You can see it's, yeah, now here we go. It's about 2.9 for the delta E right there. Maybe we're back at 1. But overall, with Windas, the delta E toward the bottom of the slider here could be a little high. That's normal. All right. Across the board here, for low delta E. So delta E is kind of like a looks like Windas is almost done. It wants us to adjust for, so as I was saying, delta E is kind of a you know, you look at like how close your X value is to where you want to be and your Y value to where you want to be. Delta E is kind of like overall how close are you. So the lower that is, the more accurate you are, the closer you're getting. So right now it wants us to actually adjust the contrast slider so that our nits is at 80. You might not have this step in yours. So, you know, the steps are going to be a little different per unit. That's, I mean, you know, that's good and that's bad. But, broadly speaking, it is a very similar procedure with different wording and like a little bit different tips, in text that comes up from Windas. Oh, and we're adjusting the sRGB space right here, and I'm still on the custom white point here, but because we're just adjusting the normal sRGB space right here, we're just going to change back to the default white point for sRGB, which is just D65. So let's click apply there. Yeah, and as you can see, our delta E is where we'd expect it to be. So let's click OK. Preset color mode adjustment is complete. So we're all done. We don't want to exit out. For sure, do not exit out right here. We have one more thing to do, the final setting, okay? And this is going to be really easy, I think. So select that. It's going to load. It's going to take a second. Do you set the final values? Yes, we do. And final setting is complete. What I like to do is click exit there. Don't just click the red X. Let's save our white point calibration. And then I'm going to date it because I have a different successful, white point calibration from earlier on. I went in and I cleaned out, I actually opened up the monitor, I, discharged it, I cleaned it out with alcohol in the PCB. It was filled with like, dirt and cobwebs and like, dead ants, And I mean, I don't know if it was just that the monitor was sitting around for a while or that, maybe cleaning it out changed it a little bit, but I did notice, I think my white point calibration from earlier was like a little bit off after I cleaned it out. So, because I, have a new calibration here for the monitor as it is right now, I'm going to save this one, even though I already have one saved from, a couple months ago. So, the latest white point calibration that you do that you're happy with, you should, save it and keep that, you don't have to like, treasure it, your initial settings. I would honestly, I'd keep that around forever, those are the factory settings, and it won't just be for color, it'll be, all the geometry factory settings, and we can go through in Windas and we can change, the geometry, and if you screwed that up, you might want to go back to the factory settings, so, or, this kind of, file right here. Like right now, I haven't touched, the geometry in this video at all on here. And I'm, saving it as it is plus, the new color, calibration. So, if I, went into Windas, I'll show you really quick. If I went into Windas and I, started doing other procedures and I, screwed up the geometry, I could always go back to that, file I just saved right there, and I could load that in, and my geometry would go back to being where it is right now, which I'm pretty happy with, and the colors would be nice. So right now, the on-screen display of the monitor should be back. It is, which is good news. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of verification here. So we're at 9300K color temperature. So I just restarted HCFR. The readings were not quite where I thought they would be. I'm not sure what happened there, but I did them again. I put the monitor on sRGB mode from the on-screen display, and then I ran the test here with the grayscale bars, and as you can see, our delta E is very low across the board. It's exactly where we want it to be. These are really good numbers. Let's run the primaries test right here as well. So the primaries on CRT monitors are not going to measure nearly as well as your white point, even after Windas calibration. It's kind of a drawback of the technology. Our delta E for our primaries here are quite high, but that's, I don't know, to me that's okay, I think that, when my red here looks a little bit orange on a CRT monitor, that's all right with, me personally. I don't really mind that. I think that CRT monitors add a lot of softness to the image. I think that they look really nice, regardless of their drawbacks. Obviously, I wish that they still made CRT monitors, but it's an old technology, and there's a reason that it doesn't exist anymore. It's heavy, it's hot, it's expensive, it's not environmental, and it's inconvenient. Okay, so I hope that the white point calibration guide today helped you. If it did, please let me know in the description. I really hope that perhaps someone out there who's a little confused got some help today. And that's about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again. I will try to make some other videos on adjusting geometry with Windas, something I'm still getting experience with, but we'll see about that. All right, see you next time.